A couple of years ago, a Reddit user made a post about a strange occurrence in their town before suddenly vanishing. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries, conspiracies, and true crime, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. I also have a Patreon and a PayPal, so if you're interested in supporting the channel, feel free to check those out, links will be in the description. In July 2019, Reddit user icemanthrowaway123 made a post on the Too Afraid to Ask subreddit titled 12 Mysterious and Identical Stores Open on My Street, What Could Be Happening? The post read, I live just outside a big city in what resembles a suburban main street. Like many suburban main streets, retail business has been rough and they've all closed down. After a month of nothingness, suddenly 12, yes a dozen, identical convenience stores pop up. They look the same, they aim for the same floor plan, they sell the same products at the same prices. The names are all tiny variations of each other, like Town Name Mart or Market of Town Name, and all clearly bought their signs from the same place, as the fonts, colours, size and shapes are identical. These stores see no business that I've ever witnessed, yet have large staff numbers and are surviving way longer than the former stores that closed on this street. When I enter one, they all stare at me while I shop. I don't usually get nervous, but it feels like they're staring threateningly rather than intently. They only accept cash unless you pay some $50. Most of their products are Walmart brand great value products being resold for higher prices. Most of the products are expired food products. I bought bread from one without checking because I was in a rush, and it turned out it was 2 months expired. Upon returning to show them, I found that the entire shelf was expired foods. What was even grosser was the dairy cooler, which had ancient milk products. I'm so confused. I feel like I'm in an episode of The Twilight Zone. What's probably happening here? Update 1. Stayed late at work and didn't end up going yesterday. Sorry for the swarm of people who did remind me within one day. I'm reading through the comments to determine what to do, if anything at all. Sorry for a less than eventful update, but given how many people were saying I was going to die, I'm just going to point out that I'm alive and well. So my first thought is that this really reminds me of the mattress firm conspiracy, and it sounds like it could be money laundering. It seems undoubtable that the 12 stores are somehow connected, considering OP describes them all as identical. I assume they're all owned by the same person or people, perhaps a mafia that's just using the stores as a front. And the employees may all just be members of the mafia that are just there to make it look like the store needs employees. It doesn't seem like whoever owns the stores is doing anything to attract customers, and if anything, they're outright deterring people from shopping there. Depending on the product, you can sometimes stretch it past its expiry date. I often see recently expired food in Fulton's here in the UK, but it's often long life stuff like tins or biscuits. They're probably not going to harm you if they're a couple of weeks out of date, and it seems a shame to throw them away if they're totally fine. But fresh products, especially dairy and bread, you could get seriously ill from eating those past their expiry date, especially if they're ancient, as OP claims. Plus, laws will prevent stores from selling out-of-date products in some areas, so it's possible that they're already breaking the law, even if that's all that they're doing. Shops like Fulton's attract custom by charging very low prices, but OP said that all these stores mark up the prices, even though the products are out of date. It's not unheard of for shops, particularly small businesses, to have a minimum spend when paying by card. And it's not unheard of for small shops, cafes and takeaways, etc. to not accept card payments at all. But it's very unusual for a shop to accept card payments and have a minimum spend of $50. It doesn't even sound like the kind of shop that you'd spend $50 in. Those details, in addition to the threatening vibes that OP feels when they enter the stores, suggest that they are making no effort to gain or to keep any customers, which perhaps means that it could be a front for something, be that money laundering or human trafficking or something else. I don't personally have any experience in either of those, but but I imagine the idea is to make it not look suspicious, and they're not exactly doing a good job of that. In what world would the sudden opening of 12 identical stores selling expired products not be suspicious? Especially considering it sounds like they're always empty, so it's just not a believable front. As for a business to be turning a significant profit, they need to be relatively busy at least some of the time, or at least not dead. Maybe they'd be better off getting the staff to just act like customers, as opposed to staff that just look like spare parts. I feel like that'd only emphasise how dead it is. If this was something to do with human trafficking, it's possible that the staff are the victims who are being trafficked, but I'd be more inclined to believe the money laundering theory than this. While human trafficking exists and is a legitimate concern, it's not as common as many people think it is, and it would be significantly more risky than money laundering. One possible reason suggested for 12 stores being opened is that the IRS compares how much revenue similar stores make in the area. I don't know much about how the IRS works, but if that's true, it could work in their favour for some time, but if anyone actually looked into it, surely it wouldn't hold up to scrutiny. If the businesses are all registered in the same name, them having a similar revenue isn't going to vouch for much, and if they're all under different names, it just looks even more suspicious that they all opened at the same time. One comment suggested that rather than money laundering, whoever is behind this is actually involved in food stamp fraud. Another user explained how that might work. If you were a broke family of 4, they give you $642 a month in benefits that you can only spend on food. So obviously it's a lot for groceries. So the solution is to somehow trade that grocery store credit for cash and then use the cash for things that you actually need. Informally, I'm sure many people buy groceries for family and friends and get paid in cash. In a more organised fashion, grocery stores can buy the food stamps by charging non-existent food and then giving the customer half the value in cash. Some grocery stores even stock up via food stamps and then sell the food for cash. Now it's moved to EBT rather than actual stamps to make them harder to sell. In some ways it's actually easier. I'm sure they just clone the EBT cards and keep a stack of them at the store, and then they just charge a pre-arranged amount of food on the cloned card. They probably spread it over a lot of stores to keep it from setting off automated alarms for spending patterns that aren't typical. The same thing happens with WIC benefits. There's a whole thriving market for all of this. That theory makes the most sense to me. While it's certainly not a foolproof plan, it sounds like it might be harder to get caught doing that as opposed to money laundering, or especially human trafficking. That said, it sounds like this is all happening in quite a small area. Would there be enough people that are not only on food stamps, but willing to commit fraud to make it worth opening 12 different stores? Bearing in mind each store costs money to keep open, whoever runs them either bought the buildings outright, or pay rent, then there's energy bills and staff wages. Even if the staff are in on the scheme, part of the mafia or whatever, they're still going to need paying somehow. OP did say in a comment that the town they live in is basically a retirement community, so perhaps there might be more people who use food stamps than in the average town. I guess their customers wouldn't necessarily be restricted to the local area though. Perhaps they also operate online and just use the stores as a front for it all, though I'm not sure exactly how that would work. Whatever is going on here, it certainly looks suspicious, and they don't appear to be making any effort to make it seem any less so, which makes me wonder if the authorities might actually be involved in this. According to OP, the town normally has a lengthy public approval process for new stores, but these 12 stores just showed up almost instantly. Perhaps there were just many vacant properties at the time that needed filling. OP did mention that there were stores there previously that had all shut down due to rough times. If they'd been empty for some time, perhaps the council just fast-tracked the process. But what are the chances that 12 stores were all vacant at the same time, and that all of these identical stores were all approved at once? It doesn't seem a massive stretch to suggest that the town's council might know exactly what is going on, whatever that may be. As with any post on Reddit, or the internet in general, there's a chance that this story could be fabricated. OP didn't post any photos as evidence, perhaps because they didn't want to reveal their exact location, but they could have blacked out the town's name on these shops. Still, I understand the potential paranoia. If something seriously illegal is going on here, it makes sense that OP would be very conscious about not revealing their identity. If someone involved with these stores were to see the Reddit post, it probably wouldn't be that hard for them to identify OP. This is quite a unique situation in itself, and OP said that they'd visited various different stores and returned expired bread. The stores likely have CCTV, so even if OP never visited one of them again, they could just look back on all the CCTV footage and pick out the face of the person that returned the bread, if they were worried enough that this person might cause problems for them. It's better safe than sorry in a situation like this, so I don't think OP leaving certain details out proves that they made the story up. Despite throwaway being in the account name, it was created months before the post, and running up to the post, OP was very active on it. Then after responding to a few comments on the post, OP just seemed to vanish, never to be heard from again. This is quite a typical ending to a Reddit mystery, and it always leaves you wondering if this person was just trying to create a mystery and then got out of there before people started asking too many questions, or if they simply abandoned the account for unrelated reasons, or if something bad happened to them. In most cases, it's not the latter, but you just never know. The main thing that stands out to me is just how unusual this situation is. Perhaps not unheard of, but I'm not sure. I do think it could be a made-up story, but sometimes reality is stranger than fiction, and it's still an interesting story regardless. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think might be going on here? If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my patrons, whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on Thursday for a new video.